everybody's like very kind-hearted and you can easily talk to anybody. Even then, there are a gap between the generation, and it's really hard to overcome even until now. That's the question.
Yeah, so I would say the idea of a generation gap is not really a new thing, right? So I think every generation has recognized that there has been a generation gap. I do think one of the difficulties of the present period as opposed to previous generations is that the nature of communication across generations in previous generations was basically everyone used more or less the same forms for communication, right? And those forms of communication were relatively limited, right? So you had, face-to-face communication, you had print, you had television, you had radio, and that was pretty much it. I think one of the things that is fundamentally different about this moment is not only has social media become an important domain of communication, but that domain of communication is incredibly important to the youth. And as we know, older people use it much less. And that the youth use social media to communicate to the exclusion of other forms of communication that perhaps older people are more comfortable with. And so you end up with you don't have as many common grounds where people are able to kind of engage and discuss as you did before. So I think what that means is one has to be much more intentional about then finding places to share those experiences and communicate. I think that would be one of those things. I think secondly, I think the evidence that we have is that social media in particular is not a very helpful platform for deliberation and for kind of robust exchanging of ideas and so forth. It's not really a very good listening platform. It's a very good mobilizing platform, right? If you want to plan a demonstration, social media is great. If you want to, share your thoughts on something, social media is great. But it lacks the kind of deliberative kind of context that other forms of communication have. And so I think it's, finding, in previous years, you would have organizations that were multi-generational, civil society organizations, whether they were religious or trade unions or community organizations and so forth. And what we know is now is those kind of multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and this is not just an Indonesia problem, this is a bigger problem. Those kinds of social civil society organizations that brought people together are not as robust. They're not as strong. And so we lack the vehicles for that. And I think that's where there can be a lot of experimentation and innovation for creating new and revitalizing older forms.
Thank you very much, Professor. So give me a few seconds to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem.
Jadi generation gap, perbedaan antar generasi itu sudah bukan hal yang baru. Jadi kesulitan yang ada di periode sekarang ini adalah menurut Profesor John Gershman, yang pertama adalah nature of the communications. Yang pertama adalah komunikasi sekarang pada generasi yang lebih tua itu face to face, terus kemudian radio, TV, printer. Tapi zaman sekarang sosial media sangat mendominasi form of communications yang dimiliki.
Okay. It's okay. We have some trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to continue?
Yeah, I will continue.
Okay.
Yeah, I will continue. We have some trouble. Okay. Jadi mungkin
misalnya
generation gap saat ini,
masalah yang paling
sulit sekali
sulit sekali itu adalah masalah komunikasi. Dari Profesor John Gersman sendiri sebenarnya tidak menyarankan jika kita menggunakan media sosial sebagai alat satu-satunya atau alat utama dalam berkomunikasi. Karena jika dalam media sosial itu
kita berbicara tidak ada pendalaman pertimbangan yang baik gitu, sehingga lebih mudah menciptakan kesalahpahaman. Jadi
baik gitu sehingga lebih jadi jika memang kita harus berbicara lebih baik dalam forum face to face gitu. Media sosial it's okay, tapi itu hanya untuk meng-share hal-hal yang mungkin yang tidak perlu ada pendalaman. Di sini sebenarnya kita juga bisa melihat sih banyaknya salah paham ya, atau dalam konteks Twitter itu ada tweet war gitu, atau dalam Instagram itu ada comment war gitu. Jadi itu sebenarnya terjadi karena kesalahpahaman, karena memang media sosial ini tidak menyediakan fasilitas untuk kita berbicara dingin, face to face, dan lebih mendalam gitu. Jadi untuk generation mungkin kita bisa berkomunikasi tidak hanya sosial media itu saja. Oke.
Halo, selamat malam Ibu Risa. Mohon maaf.
Aryani ya.
My connection was blacking out. Iya, koneksi saya barusan terputus, tidak tahu kenapa.
Yes, I've already explained about the last questions and answers. Now we move to next questions.
Halo.
Hello?
Okay, we now
move to the next questions.
Was there another question?
Yes. Okay. Let me continue. The question is from Rizky. Is political party still very important? What about independent people that enter the parliament? Do you think political party is the only way to enter the parliament? Because maybe young generation still need channel to convey their opinion and become a part of government. What do you say, sir?
What do you say, sir?
So, I mean, I think at the moment, of course, it seems like political parties are the only way to enter parliament. But there's lots of other ways to influence policymaking besides being in parliament, both at the local